How do you get one of the world's best passports for travel and for freedom of movement without the high tax consequences that often are associated with what we call Tier A passport countries? Well, today I'm going to share with you some of the most tax-friendly countries that yield some of the best passports in the world. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure and sometimes 9- and 10-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. And so we've talked a lot in the past about tax-friendly second passports. I think anyone who has wealth, who has a high income, or who's in some kind of high-risk area like cryptocurrency should have a second passport. Anyone who wants to protect their freedom should have a second passport, which we've seen in recent years being very important. But when we've talked about tax-friendly passports in the past, we've talked about, for example, in the Caribbean, St. Kitts and Nevis, no income tax. Antigua, no personal income tax. Vanuatu, a program that is currently suffering some challenges, no income tax. Practically no kind of tax at all. That's part of why they're suffering the challenges. It's just been too laissez-faire. But those are countries where you can become a citizen. The citizenship itself, as we've told you, does not necessarily lower your taxes. You can't live in London and say, hey, I'm a citizen of St. Kitts, you can't tax me. That's not how it works. You actually have to live there, or at least live somewhere else. But at least that country gives the ability to have the option to live there, or to travel, live nomadically, whatever, and to not be burdened with taxes. Now, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, they stand out as pretty good travel documents. If you only were a citizen of those countries, or one of those countries, you could get around. You could go to most places. You could go to London. You could go to Europe. You could go to Singapore. You could, of course, COVID restrictions aside, you could go to pretty much anywhere in South America, Central America. You're going to be needing a visa for the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, but you're going to have great travel privileges, more than most citizens of most countries. However, they are not the best. If you look at a ranking, in our rankings, they might be among the best 50 passports, where every passport is ranked individually. You'll see some of these indexes that rank, 5 passports is number 2. If you rank them all, only one number for one passport, a Caribbean passport would be in the top 50 out of more than 200 different kinds of passports. So that's certainly not bad, considering that you have 20-some countries in Europe, in the European Union, which are all ranked very highly. Of course, they can go to the US and Canada and all that. And so that brings me to the point. I was looking at a report recently where one particular group ranked what they thought were the best passports in terms of their methodology for travel. And they listed, again, number 1 was 2 different countries, Japan and Singapore. Number 2 was Germany and South Korea. So you've got, ties for every ranking, basically. And then it was Finland and Italy and Luxembourg and Spain. And then it was number 4, Austria, Denmark, France, Netherlands, and Sweden. Number 5, Ireland and Portugal. And then it went on and on and on. And I'm looking at these and I'm thinking, okay, most people aren't going to become Japanese. I've seen a couple people become Japanese, but you've got restrictions, you've got some really weird tax rules for citizens. And it's just very difficult. I mean, you're not going to become naturalized in many cases in Japan. Singapore, rather difficult to be naturalized as well, and you don't have a lot of freedom with those because you don't have dual citizenship. Germany is possible, but you can live there. They do have some crypto tax benefits, but by and large, taxes there are high. You've got to live there for, at this point, 8 years. They're trying to shorten it. You've got to learn German. It's a palaver for most people. South Korea, the same. No dual citizenship. You're going to learn South Korean very rigidly. And so I'm looking through this list and I'm saying, where can you go and obtain a citizenship that is superior to a Caribbean one? Which is, nothing to sneeze at, the Caribbean ones. But if you want the creme de la creme, if you want one of the top 7, there must be 24 passports that make up the top 7 on this list. But if you wanted the best passports to hold, where you could actually go and spend some time and actually get citizenship, and you could hold dual citizenship, where would those passports be? And I'll share with you 4 that stand out to me. Number 7 on the list was Greece, and I've been helping a number of people recently obtain Greek citizenship by descent. They have someone in the family tree was Greek. I'll take that, but unless you have someone in the family tree who's Greek, I know a number of attorneys who agree with this, really think that naturalizing in Greece is going to be very difficult. Greece could be tax-friendly. They do have a tax exception program that you can go. If you haven't lived in Greece, you can go and live there. You can pay a flat amount of tax. You can get a home, and you could do that. But I have some doubts that if you're not Greek, that you would necessarily be naturalized in due course. And so I wouldn't necessarily rely on Greece, although they could potentially be tax-friendly for some people. So again, the criteria is where can I go and live in a country where I am going to be naturalized in the future. But in order to do that naturalization, I'm not going to be taxed out the wazoo. Because again, I can go live in Germany, and if I make $10 million a year, I'm going to give them $5 million a year, or euros, whatever you want to call it, right? So why would I necessarily want to do that? 8 years, 5 million euros a year. I mean, that's a pretty expensive passport. I could go to Malta, which didn't quite, actually, it made it number 7 on the list. I could go to Malta, I could spend $1 million, I could get that passport, and I could live wherever I want if the goal was to get a top-tier travel document. And so Malta, in their citizenship program, they don't call it citizenship by investment, but it's essentially an 18-month or so track to having a passport. Malta ranks number 7, access to 185 countries. You could go out, you could spend $1 million on that. But where else could you do it potentially more cheaply if you actually want to spend some time on the ground? Well, the most commonly discussed one is Portugal. They rank number 5 with access to 187 countries. You can use one of the independent means visas, and you can go and you can actually spend time on the ground. You can commit to a majority of the year in Portugal if you want to do that. Or you can use the golden visa, where they've recently reduced the investment options or increased the price. But you're only committing 7 days a year on average. And if you do that, and if you learn some basic Portuguese in a handful of years, you can go and become a Portuguese citizen. You've got, according to this list, the 5th, tied for 5th, best passport in the world. And through their NHR program and through their crypto tax exemption, depending on what your income source is, you don't pay that much in tax. If you're the guy who makes $10 million a year, you could set up your company and you could pay 5 or 6% tax. And so you're, instead of paying $5 million, you're going to pay $500,000. And so you can then live, or in the case of the golden visa, not live in Portugal. Where else can you go? The other number 5 passport is Ireland. And they have a tax incentive program that if you're coming in and Ireland isn't your home, you can basically pay on the money that you live on. And potentially in some cases, you don't even have to do that. But you can basically say, all right, I'm going to pay Irish taxes on the money that I'm required to live on. But hey, I make that $10 million, or I make $2 million, or whatever the case may be. I don't need $2 million to live. And so while there is certainly some complicated tax planning in any country in Europe, let's not make it seem extremely simple, you can potentially pay less than you would in Portugal to live there. And so you can then work towards Irish citizenship. You're going to have to live there. You're going to have to live there a lot, actually. English-speaking countries generally do require pretty substantial physical presence. There is no 7-day option. You're going to be living there a majority of the year for anywhere from 5 to 9 years. But if you want that, the Irish passport is unique, and it's not only in the EU, but you also have privileges with the UK. And of course, who doesn't love the Irish? And so that's an interesting passport you can obtain if you really want to commit to spending time in Ireland. Other countries on the list, Italy came in at number 3 on the list. And so this is really the best tax-friendly passport in Europe that you can get, where you can hold other citizenships and where you actually have a good chance of getting it. Now, Italy's going to take longer. You do have to be there for 10 years. You do have to, again, learn some Italian. But Italy has a tax incentive program, and you can work towards citizenship while you pay their lump sum amount of tax. They have not only a lump sum tax that starts at 100,000 euros, they also have discounts up to 90% on taxes. If you don't have enough money to justify the 100,000, you can get substantial tax reductions for anywhere from 5 to 10 years. They have different incentives for retirees. So Italy has a bunch of tax incentives. As much as Italy's a high tax country, they have the 3rd best passport in the world, tied for 3rd, and you can work towards that on a slower timeline than the other countries, but paying a predictable annual amount of tax or paying a dramatically lower rate of tax than everyone else because you have not lived in Italy before. And the last country that stands out is the UK. They were 6th, so they are, other than Malta, I guess, the lowest. But we're talking, I mean, literally, when they say 6th or 5th, I mean, you're talking 1 or 2 extra countries. It literally could be, you can go to the Central African Republic and you can't. Who cares, right? So the UK, I mean, they're all pretty much the same. The UK, obviously not part of the EU, does have the reciprocal agreement with Ireland, which is a nice benefit. But of course, you don't have the full EU privileges anymore. You can go to the UK. You can also take advantage of a tax exemption where how much money are you living on? And so if you have a very high income and you're not living on all of it, you're reinvesting it or you're saving it, you're whatever, you don't have to pay the full rates. You pay the full rate on what it is that you're bringing in, but you get a substantial savings on the overall rate, and you can work towards citizenship. Now, the issue is once you obtain some of these citizenships, it may be some of the tax benefits may no longer be available either because of the passage of time or because you get the citizenship. So there's many factors that go into this. Cyprus, by the way, a country that did not make the top 7, but that could have some benefits of the same order where you can reduce your taxes. So if you're willing to go and move to a country, Singapore you could potentially move to, and maybe if you got lucky, you could become naturalized in the distant future, but very difficult to do that anymore. And again, no dual. Has some certain restrictions. If you're willing to go and put in time, or in the case of Portugal, not put in the time, you can work towards one of these top-tier citizenships. Obviously, it's a lot more work. It is more advanced tax planning. Please don't take any of this as tax advice. I'm giving you kind of high-level ideas that may be a little bit different for your particular situation, depending on where you're going. But you can work towards, in a matter of 5 to 10 years, one of these top-tier citizenships that, of course, if they're in Europe, give you access to then go and live anywhere else in Europe without having to go through the same rigmarole as a non-EU citizen. But they also offer you some of the best travel privileges all around the world, better than you would get in the Caribbean. As I always say when it comes to citizenship, time versus money are two of the most important criteria. If you want to pay more money, you can spend less time. If you want better quality, it's going to be money or time again. Do I want to pay Malta $1 million, or do I want to commit to spending 5, 7, 9, 10 years in one of these countries? Maybe you want to live there anyway. You can get one of their passports, and you can do so without the high taxes that you might expect. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.